or O-levels. I have 8 honorary degrees now. Yeah. But I only have 4 O-levels. So I was always quite the sparky one, you know. I didn't want to be put down by these highly educated young men, but they gave me a lot of space. What happened really was, for the first couple of series, like most British comedies, it was written by 2 people, and they presented their script to us on the first day. We would rehearse it and do it. But by the middle of the second series, we realised that there weren't just 2 writers. Virtually everyone in the room was a very talented writer. So it became much more collective. It became much more like, you know how in American comedies they have what they call the writer's room, where there's probably as many as 8 or 9 people feeding comedy in, and that was what it transformed into. The basis of it was always Richard and Ben's work, but loads of people would be contributing to the gags. I mean, so the gags got longer and longer and longer, basically. A perfect example of that. And you can hear in the gag how loads of people have contributed to it. I'm sure you'll know this one. So Baldrick comes on, he says, Mr. Blackadder, I have a message. Blackadder reads it and says, that is the worst message I have ever read. And we all went, no, that's a terrible line. There's no imagination there. That's not a Blackadder line. Why is it a bad message? What is it about it that's bad? What's a metaphor to demonstrate quite how bad it was? And so we kept adding bits and bits and bits until eventually the line was, Baldrick, that is the worst message I've ever read since Admiral Lord Nelson flagged up at the Battle of the Nile, Lady Hamilton's a virgin, cut my arm off and poke my eye out if I'm wrong. You can hear, can't you, how, you know, Hugh Laurie's added a bit, Tim McInerney has. See, that's why it is so long. The short answer to your question is, we were lucky enough to have so many really artful, imaginative writers all in the room at the same time. And I don't know of any other English series that has had that kind of quality. So we were very, very lucky.
You've just reminded me of one that I found particularly funny. It was Sticky the Stick Insect, you got stuck in a sticky bun.
Yeah. Well, yes, it was always like a competition to get the best metaphor one possibly could.
From the 4 seasons, what was your favourite season?
I thought you were talking about the hotel, I'm sorry. Phuket. Well, I've got 2 answers to that. I think you have to say that the finest piece of writing was the 4th series. And the idea of it was that they wanted to make a really claustrophobic comedy. Something where a few people were jammed in a room and couldn't get out. And the trenches seem to be the perfect example of that. So, for instance, we had far less guest actors in that 4th series. It tended all to be about the half dozen of us. And so as an actor, it was great, enormous privilege to be one of those people in that petri dish of comedy. But I also had an enormous fondness for the 3rd series, the Regency series, because of Hugh Laurie's magnificent performance as the Prince of Wales, and because I'd got lines like there was one where Blackadder said to me, Baldrick, you don't know what irony is, do you? And I said, yes, sir, it's like goldy and silvery, but it's made of iron. And that's just... Who wouldn't want to say a line like that? And also the burning of the dictionary, I absolutely... But I thought it was enormous courage on behalf of the writers to write a whole series about a period of English history which nobody knows anything about at all. People were watching a series about... It was different, wasn't it, with Queen Elizabeth. Everybody knows about Queen Elizabeth, everybody knows about the First World War, but the Regency period? Who knows?
Do you think there will be a fifth Black Adam?
You can never say never. Every time I say, well, I'm not sure, you know, I get told off. You know, people say, no, it's definitely finished, it's definitely finished. I have an instinct that it's not quite done, but who can tell? Maybe I'm just a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
Do you have any questions from the audience? Yes, that gentleman.
What's it like having a relatively settled cast and then the force of chaos that is Rick Mail? You have felt that twice. What's it like working with him?
Did you hear that? Essentially, it's what was Rick Mail like to work with, the force of chaos, as gentleman said. Rick was the most competitive actor I've ever met. He was a genius, but he is the only actor I've ever known where when you finished playing a scene with him and you both come off stage, he will turn to you and say, I won. That epitomises Rick.
Yeah.
The lady said, I've done comedy, I've done drama, I've done history. What is my favourite out of those? Which one would I like to go back to? I really am a butterfly. As soon as I start doing one thing, I'm thinking, oh, what's the next one going to be? So I've always loved moving from one thing to another. For the last year, I've been a full-time writer. I was commissioned to write a trilogy by Sphere Books, a historic trilogy about King Alfred, and it's been wonderfully exciting. It's called The House of Wolf. It got into the Sunday Times Top 10. It's nominated for the First Novel of the Year award. I've just come back, had a fantastic 5 weeks in Australia and New Zealand. I played, it's so exciting, I played a full house at the Sydney Opera House,
wow,
talking about my book and loads of other gigs too. It's the first time for years and years and years that I've stuck with one thing, one discipline for at least a year, and I'm still enjoying doing it. So even this morning, we had a little break for tea, and I was writing a few sentences of the second book then. So at the moment, I'm quite happy, predominantly doing writing. On Wednesday, we fly over to Malta because I'm doing another series of Madame Blanc's Mysteries, doing another series of that on the island of Gozo. So that would be fun, see all my mates over there.
Now, your career took an interesting turn into archaeology. How did that happen?
There are two answers to that. I spent 3 summers at Chichester, at the Chichester Festival Theatre, and while I was there, they were excavating Roman Chichester, and I just thought it was fascinating going from place to place. Obviously, they couldn't dig up the whole of Chichester, so they were digging what we now know as test pits, although it was a fairly new innovation at that time. And so I would move from test pit to test pit, got friendly with all the archaeologists, and when the show was over, I moved back to Bristol, where I was living at the time, and I started doing extramural classes in archaeology, just because I was very interested in doing it. And about 4 years later, Channel 4 were pitched this idea of doing archaeology in 3 days. And they thought it was a great idea, but archaeology was such an arcane subject that they thought no one would be interested. And it being Channel 4 in its very early days, they thought, who could we get to front it? I know, let's choose the person who plays the stupidest person on television. Me again. So they got me in to ask me if I'd be interested in doing this series, not knowing that I already had a passion for archaeology. So it was a marriage made in heaven, really. When it first started, I thought that I really needed to mug up on my archaeology and archaeological techniques before each episode. After a while, the producer said to me, Tony, what works best is when you genuinely know all. Sorry, something went wrong with the mic. And so after that, I didn't do any work prior to the series. I would just go in and, as it were, would interrogate the archaeology, interrogate the archaeologists. In other words, I would be your voice. And that seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah.
Got 20 series of it. You know, who gets 20 series of anything on television?
Hey! Woo! Yeah.
Now, I'm interested to hear about your knighthood experience. What happened at the palace?
It wasn't actually the first time that I'd been to the palace. About a year previously, we did the big royal dig, which was an excavation of the palace, and it was live, so it was really, really scary. And just before we were about to do the first one, I realised I had to have a pee. And so I told the guy who was in charge, and he said, there is no time. He said, the Portaloos are right on the other side of Pal. You'd never get there and back in time. You'll just have to get on with it. And I couldn't. You know, I'm middle-aged. I have a prostate the size of Tasmania. So I looked all around, and there were the palace gardens.
Yay! Blackadder!
So I sprinted down into the palace gardens, and there was this little copse of trees, and there was this big hornbeam tree which obscured the view of where I was from the palace. So I got behind it, and I started to have a wee, and I heard this noise,
Oh no.
and I'm peeing away, and I looked up, and right at the top of this hornbeam tree, there was a security camera. And it was kind of looking round. It was going duk-a-duk-a-duk to one side, duk-a-duk-duk to the other, and then it went duk-a-duk-a-duk-a-duk down on me. But because I had to finish, I couldn't stop halfway through. So I carried on blithely, finished, and just as I finished, a copper burst out of a bush with a German Shepherd dog. And he came right up to me, and he leant down at me, and he said, I bet everybody wishes they could have done that. So that was my introduction. But then when I got the knighthood, I was given these instructions. I was in the queue, waiting to go on to be knighted. And I was first in the queue because I was the only knight that day. And this flunky said to me, you go in, you turn, you only speak when you're spoken to. In front of you, you'll see a little cushion. You kneel down on that, you receive the knighthood, you get up and you turn right away from the rest of the queue of people who are waiting, and then we carry on. So I thought, well, any fool can do that. So I was waiting, and then the summons came, Anthony Robinson, and I came on, and I turned round and was facing Prince William, and my mind blanked completely. I totally forgot the instructions. I totally forgot what I was supposed to do, and I looked at William, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he went. So I went. And eventually the penny dropped, and I knelt down. And you know how in a movie, if someone strikes with a sword, you know how it also goes into slow-mo, always, doesn't it? That's how it felt like, as the old sword came down. It was, and he knighted me, and I got up, and I turned left right into the crowd of people waiting to receive their honours. So I completely, what's the phrase? I completely bollocksed it up.
Another question, please.
Okay, so this is a series that I did. I actually did it for Jackanory. It was called Odysseus, the Greatest Hero of them All. And my idea was to get the Iliad and the Odyssey, which had been written in 800 BC by Homer, and translate them into something which was accessible to children's television. And I had a problem with Jackanory. I thought it was good in that it showcased children's books, but it never seemed to me to be storytelling. What it was essentially an actor reading off an autocue, whereas storytelling is like I'm doing now, isn't it? You know, clocking you, making up the words as I go along, using those storytelling rhythms that anybody does when they're telling a story, and having a sort of relationship with you, and the story is about the relationship. And I thought that's what I want to do on television. In other words, what I want to do is improvise it. And so that's what I did. I worked very hard on the improvising. I knew what all the stories about the Cyclops and about Helen of Troy and Agamemnon and Clytemnestra and the wily Odysseus. I knew what those stories were. I knew the vocabulary, but then I threw it all away and just stood in front of the camera and improvised. And I mean, a lot of people do that now, but as far as I know, I was the first person who'd done that on children's television. And quite honestly, after that, I did Tales from Fat Tulip's Garden and a whole lot of things similar to that. And yeah, and I'm very proud of it still, very proud. It won an RTS.
Yeah.
I am very proud to be sitting here talking to you. Ladies and gentlemen, please show your appreciation for Sir Tony Robinson.
What's that?
Appreciate you. Top man.